Hello everyone, welcome again to my channel. I hope you are doing well and thanks for the click. For those who are looking for where the micro is, here is it. Alright, so the first thing that I'd like to tell you is that all the topics that I tackle or I tackled so far are your suggestions. So I'm sorry if I didn't reach your expectations, okay? Alright. Today we are going to talk about another topic related to the preparations for the CRMF entrance exam, okay? Alright, so this is the end, we are in the end of 2020 and this year is a year that we will never forget, nobody will forget. It is characterized by the coronavirus pandemic. And this pandemic, the coronavirus, has impacted everything in our life, including schooling, including studying, including teaching and learning, okay? So when first the coronavirus appeared, schools closed. We stopped going to school. Students stopped going to school. So we were obliged to look for solution. So we resorted to what we call the distance teaching. We call it distance teaching or what we call the remote teaching, okay? So either distance teaching or remote teaching. So this is a way of teaching that existed before but appeared to the surface, particularly with this year with the coronavirus pandemic, okay? Because people were at home, people were quarantined, so this is why we were obliged to resort to this way of teaching, to the remote teaching or distance teaching, okay? Now, when we talk about remote teaching, we talk about a lot of terms and concepts that goes with it. So these are the most common terminology, terms, concepts related to the distance teaching, okay? Distance teaching, all right? Technologies, internet, studying online, social media, for example, Facebook and WhatsApp. And we also talk about applications, some apps, for example, the Team platform. It's an app for distance teaching. All right, now if you go to schools nowadays and ask all students and all teachers about their opinion and impression about the distance teaching and learning, you will notice that all of them are unsatisfied, okay? Unsatisfied. Why? Why do you think most of students and most of teachers, if not all of them, are unsatisfied with the distance teaching? Well, in fact, you have to keep in mind that they're unsatisfied for two reasons. Number one, what we call the unfamiliarity. And here I mean both teachers and students are not familiar with this way of teaching and learning, okay? So this is something new, just appeared to surface this year with the coronavirus, as I said, okay? So teachers and students are not familiar with it, okay? So that's why they are unsatisfied. And number two is the problem of connection, all right? Internet connection, the problem of network, okay? These are the two main reasons why teachers and students, both of them, are unsatisfied with the distance teaching, okay? So unfamiliarity, this is something new. Students and teachers are unfamiliar with this kind of teaching, and the problem of internet connection. A lot of students lack this service. A lot of students and even some teachers don't have access to internet, especially those who are living in countryside, okay? So here in this episode, we are going to talk about distance teaching and learning as far as English is concerned, okay? As far as the teaching of English is concerned. So we will restrict this and direct this to teaching English. So we are going to talk about teaching English because you will be teachers of English, okay? All right, so the first question that comes to our mind and we have to ask, is distance or remote teaching appropriate, effective for teaching and learning English or any other languages? Is it effective? Okay, this is the question. Now here, in fact, the answer of this question depends on how do you teach remotely. How? Normally, teachers use different ways to teach remotely, okay? For example, there are some teachers who make groups either on Facebook or on WhatsApp, and they start teaching students in those groups but teaching them in ways, again, in different ways. For example, typing, written communication with messages. This is how they communicate and explain, and students react and answer with typing, sentences and words. And this is number one. There are some teachers who resort to what we call audio messages. They send audios and students listen to those audios. And there are some teachers who go live with their students, live on Facebook, for example. And there are some teachers who just send, we can say, summaries. Okay, summaries of lessons, and students study those summaries and learn them, and even maybe copying them into their notebooks. Okay, so these are ways. This is how teachers teach remotely. So either by typing, communication via words and sentences. They can also use audio messages, speaking, and student listen, or they can go live, direct, on Facebook, for example, or they can send student summaries and students study those summaries and learn them by heart. Okay, so these are ways, different ways. Okay, so every teacher uses the appropriate way for him or for her. Okay, all right, so the answer of whether distance teaching is effective for language teaching and learning depends on your way you use for teaching remotely. So you have to choose the appropriate, okay? To choose the appropriate, you can use all of them, you can use two, you can use all of them, all right? So as I said, whether distance teaching is effective or not depends on the ways and how do you teach remotely, okay? All right, another thing that I'd like to talk to you about distance teaching and learning is that when we talk about a new method of teaching and a new way of teaching, for sure that method or that way has drawbacks and strengths, positive sides and negative sides, advantages and disadvantages. Again, here, as far as distance teaching is concerned or remote teaching is concerned, we are going to talk about the positive sides and negative sides of distance teaching, okay, of distance teaching. All right, so as I said, we can say positive sides or strengths or advantages. Here we can say negative sides or drawbacks or disadvantages. Okay, all right, but remember, we are going to restrict these points, positive sides and negative sides, to, as I said, to the teaching of English, okay? Teaching language, English in particular, okay? All right, we are not going to talk about the positive sides and negative sides of distance teaching in general. However, you should know that, okay? You should know that and look for that, okay? The negative sides and positive sides of distance teaching in general. But here we are going to talk about the positive sides and negative sides as far as English is concerned, language is concerned, okay? All right, now let's be positive and start with the positive sides, okay? Number one is spelling and writing. So remote teaching is good for spelling and writing. Students develop their writing skill and also they improve themselves as far as spelling is concerned, okay? Here in remote teaching, most of the time students will be interacting with the teacher and with each other only by typing words and typing sentences. So this is good for students to master the spelling and to improve their writing skill. Another thing, in the remote teaching, students will be practicing a lot. It will be a good chance for students to do a lot of exercises to practice particularly the form, okay, the form of any component, of any language component. So practicing, as I said, the form, okay, practicing the form, okay. All right, number three, pictures. So here it will be easier for you to send pictures to students. For example, if student didn't understand something, you can go to Google and you get a picture of that word, for example, and you send that to the student. Student will easily understand what you want to talk about by pictures. So in remote teaching, it becomes easier for a teacher to use pictures to help students learn. Okay. The last point why distance teaching is positive is for autonomous learning. And when I say autonomous learning, distance teaching and learning will give an idea to students that studying and learning is not restricted mainly to schools, but it's something that can also take place at home. Students can also learn at home, they can also learn by themselves, okay? All right, so this is for positive sides. These are just examples you can look for, you can think about different ones, okay? Let's go to the negative sides. Number one is absenteeism, okay? So this is related to students, okay? To student, a problem that many teachers encountered, okay? A lot of students don't attend the sessions. Just very few, I would say, just very few students attend and are serious, okay? So the majority of students don't attend, as I said, because this is something new and students are not familiar with it, okay? So this is a problem, absenteeism, which means not all students benefit. There are some students who don't attend because of the connection problem, or perhaps some of them don't have mobile phones, for example, or computers, okay? Number two, individual work. Individual work. So as you can see in classroom teaching, when we are teaching a certain language, we don't use only individual work. We can use pair work, we can use group work. In the distance teaching, the only mode of work exists is the individual work, okay? So students work individually, okay? All right, so this is a negative side. There is no interaction between students. There is no face-to-face interaction. There is no discussion, etc., okay? Number three, again, sad again. Students don't speak. And as you know, speaking is good for language learning. So this skill, speaking, is totally absent. Unless if some students send some audio messages, they speak. But the majority don't. So the speaking skill is totally absent. Not only speaking, but also listening. Listening, okay, is also absent, particularly if you, as a teacher, resort only to this way or this way. Both speaking and listening are absent. So these are two important skills are absent. Not totally absent, but absent in some ways, as I said, okay? Another thing is monitoring and managing. Monitoring students and managing students are very, very hard. So for example, you have 20 students and 20 students send you audio messages. So you have to listen to 20 audios. This will take something like 1 hour to listen to all of them. Okay, so managing and monitoring is very difficult. When students are answering, even typing, for example, this one answers and that one answers, so we have to react and answer everybody, so it's a little bit hard. So monitoring and managing is very difficult and very hard. Also, in terms of assessment, we have only one way assessment. We can say assessment or concept checking. In classroom, for example, you can ask student questions and student answer. You just give them the first word and student complete, etc. These are ways of assessment, of concept checking that are totally absent in remote teaching, okay? In remote teaching, the only way of assessment we have is giving exercises and students do the exercises and send you the exercises, okay? So these are the drawbacks, okay? The drawbacks and the negative sides, or we can also say the disadvantages of the distance teaching or remote teaching as far as teaching English is concerned, or teaching a language in general is concerned, okay? So this is it. We have the positive sides, we have the negative sides, we have ways of teaching remotely. What is the solution? Very simply here, the solution is that we have to work on these sides. We have to work on these negative sides and try to find solution to these negative sides by, for example, creating and thinking of different ways of teaching remotely, or by combining all of them, okay? This is what we have to do in future. And don't forget, here we talked about negative sides and positive sides of remote and distance teaching as far as teaching English is concerned. You can talk about the positive sides and negative sides of remote teaching in general, okay? In general. So this is it. I wish you good luck. If you have any question or suggestion, don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your suggestions, and see you in another session with another topic, okay? Goodbye.